Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle has the night off. The Senate impeachment trial of President Donald Trump comes to an end.
The Senate adjudges that the respondent, Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is not guilty as charged.
There were no surprises as Republican-led Senate acquitted President Trump on Article 1, abuse of power, and on Article 2, obstruction of Congress. Well, the outcome was predictable, and so is much of the reaction tonight from Montana and Wyoming lawmakers now that it's over. All Republicans voting against those charges. Republican Senator Steve Daines of Montana said, "Never has the Senate been faced with articles of impeachment against a president that allege no crimes, and never have we seen such a partisan presidential impeachment process. This has always been about overturning the 2016 election and trying to severely impact the 2020 election." Representative Greg Gianforte saying the Senate's acquittal of President Trump closes the door on Nancy Pelosi's hyper-partisan impeachment sham. Wyoming Senator Mike Enzi says it was the House's responsibility to ensure it had developed a complete record of the evidence it needed to make its case, and it's not up to the Senate to start the process over again. Wyoming's other Senator John Barrasso saying the time for political stunts is over. The Senate had a fair trial and clear acquittal. Republicans stayed true to the Constitution. Now the Senate gets back to work for the American people. And Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney had some strong words for the Democrats, saying the country will hold the Democrats accountable for abandoning the Constitution and abdicating their oaths of office. They proved that they cannot be trusted to put their responsibility to the country before their political self-interest, and that is something the American people will long remember. Well, Democratic Senator John Tester voted guilty, calling it a sad day for this country and for all Americans who believe that no one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law. A group here in Billings disagrees with the Senate impeachment vote and has a demonstration outside Senator Steve Daines' office going on right now. Q2's David J. joins us live from downtown Billings with more on that. David?
Well, Russ, we're right here in front of the Granite Tower, right near where Senator Steve Daines' downtown Billings office is. The group Indivisible Billings is out here protesting Senator Daines' vote. He was one of the 52 that voted for acquittal and reject the cover-up. It's one of the things that this group is saying. Joining us now is Catherine Jabbs. Catherine, what's your message for the senator out here tonight?
It's very simple. The Senate held a sham trial without witnesses to cover up the president's abuse of power. It's that simple.
And out here, when we were talking with you a little bit earlier, you were saying that it may be too late, but you still have some things you want to take care of.
It's not too late. We are going to hold our senator accountable for his abuse of power, period.
Okay, great. All right, that is Catherine Jabbs out here with about 10 to 15 others. Some of the signs say, Daines, not my senator, and also talking about the impeachment trial and what they feel has gone wrong here out in Washington, D.C. And these protests are going on nationwide with the group Project Indivisible. That's the latest from out here. Russ, we'll send it back to you.
All right, David J. reporting live tonight. Thank you, David. Well, what was once a crowded four-way race for the Democratic nomination for governor in Montana is now down to a choice between two candidates, and both have deep political roots here in the state. Tonight, MTN's Jay Cohn zeroes in on the Democratic primary contest between Mike Cooney and Whitney Williams.
Democrats have controlled the governor's office in Montana for 16 straight years. Brian Schweitzer started the current streak in 2004, serving 2 terms. Steve Bullock then followed suit in 2012, also winning 2 terms in the governor's chair. Who will Democrats pin their hopes on in 2020? It's shaping into a battle between 2 candidates who both hail from prominent Montana political families. 65-year-old Lieutenant Governor Mike Cooney was just 18 when Butte voters sent him to Helena as Montana's youngest state lawmaker in 1976. Politics have been his calling ever since.
Mike Cooney has fought like hell for the people of Montana, and I have a record to show for it.
In 1989, Cooney began an 11-year run as Montana's Secretary of State. He then served 8 years as a state senator, and since 2016 has been Montana's lieutenant governor.
What this is all about, and what Montanans are really going to say, is who can fight the hardest for us, who knows how to get the job done, who has been tested, And I think the bottom line is they're going to come down and say their choice is Mike Cooney for governor.
Mike hopes to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. Frank Henry Cooney served as Montana's 9th governor from 1933 to 1935. To rally Democratic voters, Cooney is proposing that Montana allow drug imports from Canada as a way to slash prescription drug prices. He vows another run at getting the legislature to fund pre-kindergarten and says Montanans favor responsible development of our natural resources.
I think we have a record of supporting our natural resource development. We want to do it the Montana way. We don't think people should just come in and be able to write their own rules and regulations and get away with things. We want to protect our outdoor heritage.
Vying with Cooney for the Democratic nod for governor is 48-year-old Whitney Williams. Whitney's making her first run at elected office, but comes with her own political pedigree. Her father, Pat, was Montana's longest-serving congressman until his retirement in 1997. Her mother, Carol, was the state Senate's first female majority leader. Williams sees herself as the new generation of Montana Democrats who bring new energy and expertise to the table.
I have a different skill set, I have a different expertise, I have a different sensibility, and I've solved very different problems in my career, and I think that that's what Montana needs.
Williams founded her own company, Williams Works, in 2003. As CEO, she advises corporations, foundations, and individuals on everything from solving complex problems to philanthropy. As governor, she vows to fight for continued access to public lands and says it's time the legislature bites the bullet to fund pre-kindergarten.
It's never easy to get these policies enacted, but it's well past time that we educate the 4-year-olds in the state. I know the legislature and the governor have tried to do that through a number of sessions, and I think 2021 is going to be our session.
The Williams campaign has turned heads in setting new records in political fundraising. In just 3 months of work, she's raised nearly $500,000. It's a fact she believes will serve her well in the general election. Montana
has trading partners and job creators and friends all over this country, and we are proudly going to take investments from them, particularly when we believe that we're going to be running against the single wealthiest member of the United States Congress.
In spite of her impressive business background and political bloodlines, Williams is a relative unknown on the state scene. Will voters opt for a new generation of leadership, or will a familiar face like Mike Cooney, with his decades of political experience, win the day? Time will tell. In Billings, Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
All right, thank you, Jay. And tomorrow, Jay will take a closer look at the money race between the Cooney and Williams campaigns. And those two candidates will be here for a forum a week from tonight at MSUB's Petro Theater. That'll be at 6 p.m. and it is open to the public. Well, the ballot eligibility of Democratic Attorney General candidate Rafe Graybill is being Rafe Graybill being called into question. A complaint filed this week with the State Commissioner of Political Practices says that Graybill is not eligible because he hasn't practiced law in Montana for 5 years. The state constitution says any candidate for Attorney General must have engaged in an active practice of law in Montana for 5 years before his or her election. Now, Graybill says he is eligible because he was admitted to the state bar in September, and the election isn't until November, but the complaint says he worked only as a clerk for a federal judge in Billings and a law firm in Seattle before moving back to Montana in 2017. Graybill says that doesn't matter and that he's met the requirement. He also notes that the complaint was filed by a supporter of his Democratic primary opponent, Kim Dudick of Missoula. The State Commissioner of Political Practices says he will decide the issue quickly. All right, still to come on tonight's 5:30 News, find out how Billings students gave a 4-year-old girl with special needs the ride of a lifetime. And in sports, Montana State's basketball women are back on top of the Big Sky and have an all-conference guard back from injury tomorrow. Scott hears from Tricia Binford.
And coming up in weather, another big snowstorm moving into the state. How much will Billings get out of this? We'll have the answer coming up in a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.